Well, there is a new lawsuit over that mass shooting in Las Vegas. Lawyers for the Mandalay Bay are suing the victims. Yes, the victims. They say the hotel and its owner, MGM, bear no liability for the massacre that saw 58 people killed. Melissa Rainey has more.
Survivors of the worst mass shooting in modern U.S. history are being sued by MGM Resorts in Las Vegas. The company filed 2 lawsuits in federal court asking a judge to declare it has no liability of any kind for the massacre last year. MGM wants protection against more than 2,500 people who are suing or threatening to sue the company. In October, a gunman opened fire on concertgoers from a suite in the Mandalay Bay resort. 58 people were killed. MGM Resorts International is the parent company of the corporation that owns the Mandalay Bay and the Las Vegas Village where the music festival was held. The company called the shooting, quote, the despicable act of one evil individual. One attorney representing several victims from Texas had this to say.
MGM is trying to beat these people to the courthouse and declare that they have no rights.
MGM hired a security vendor for the event, which the company claims protects it from legal responsibility under the Safety Act. I'm Melissa Rainey reporting.
Joining me now from Los Angeles, attorney Brian Claypool. He represents 75 survivors and family members of the victims. He also survived the October 1st shooting in Las Vegas. Brian, thank you so much for being with us. And of course, you have a unique understanding of how the survivors of this deadly shooting are feeling right now. What do they make of this move by MGM to sue them back?
This is outrageous. It's shocking, and in my opinion, it amounts to bullying and intimidation by the MGM in Mandalay Bay. I mean, how deep in the swamp do they want to get and jump to try to save face in the worst mass shooting in the history of the United States? I mean, what they're doing is re-traumatizing and re-victimizing everybody who survived that shooting, Rosemary, including myself, my clients, everybody else who was there, and family members of those who have died. They've actually sued now the decedents, people who have died, family members of those as well. And in my opinion, that is reprehensible. They don't need to do this. If they want to seek protection under this nebulous Safety Act law that was put into place by our federal government in 2002, make no mistake about it, Rosemary, they didn't need to sue 2,500 people. All they had to do was go after one individual, one victim, and then ask for a court order on that one victim, and then that would equally apply to everybody else in the case. But no, they wanted to pound their chest, they wanted to be tough, they wanted to go out there with their public relations stunt and say, look at us, we're going to get protection. And I've got to tell you, I'm going to predict right now, this is going to backfire in the court of public opinion when we beat them on this attempt to escape liability.
Well, Brian, I mean, looking at it, you have to ask why they're doing it this way. What is the strength in their legal argument here? And one can only assume that most people would be appalled looking at this as a legal argument coming from MGM. Surely this can't help them in any way in the end.
Right. Well, there's 2 issues here. One is, legally, do they have anything to stand on with this argument to immunize themselves from liability? Then the second issue is, how does this look to the community in what they're doing? Let's talk about the first issue real quick. I mean, the first thing they have to prove, Rosemary, is that these claims that are going to be filed against MGM arose from a terroristic act. The problem they're going to have with that is there was so much media attention by the sheriff in Las Vegas especially, and law enforcement, where they declared from day one, this is not terrorism. Remember all that? This is just the act of one person, has nothing to do with terrorism. So if they lose on the terrorism issue, then case over for them on this issue. But let's say the judge somehow says this is terrorism. They still haven't won. They still have to prove that this security company, I believe they're called CSC, who they hired to help with the concert, was effective and added social utility. Those are the exact words in the law. So they can't just say, oh, we hired a company, they were certified by the Department of Homeland Security. It has to have been effective security. We're obviously going to make the argument 58 people died, hundreds others injured, and clearly that was not effective security.
But Brian, when you look at a situation like this, the gunman was the one who perpetrated this abhorrent crime upon the victims, including yourself. Who else can be held responsible in a situation like this? I mean, you mentioned there the contractors, the security team that was brought in, and presumably MGM will try to put them in the line of fire. But in a situation like this, and as you say too, it wasn't terrorism, it wasn't ever classified as terrorism in this instance, so it is just an abhorrent act that has happened. Is it possible to sue anyone in a situation like this, in reality, when you look at the facts?
Well, absolutely. But let's make one other point clear. We don't even agree that this Safety Act affords the MGM protection. At best, it might afford the security company the immunity that MGM's talking about. So the law's not 100% clear on that. But putting that aside for a moment, absolutely, as a survivor of this shooting, I will tell you that in the middle of that first round of shots, when I was ducking down, covering my face, my head, the side of my head, thinking that a bullet's going to hit me in the head, and I was convinced I was going to die, once I made it through that first round, and I thought I'd never get home to my little girl, during the second round of shooting, Rosemary, I said to myself this: I'm going to find out what happened, because this should not be happening, and I'm going to hold whoever's responsible for this accountable. So guess what? There was hapless security at the Mandalay Bay. I stayed there. I was on the 26th floor of this hotel, 6 floors below Paddock. And I'll tell you that there was absolutely zero effective security at that hotel, casino. And that, in our opinion, is the cause of this mass shooting. And we intend on proving that eventually one day in court. MGM, Rosemary, they don't want the world to see the truth about how bad their security is. So what they're doing is throwing out this Hail Mary, a desperate measure to try to preempt liability with this nebulous law to try to strip victims like myself and others from what we believe is a viable lawsuit.
Brian Claypool, thank you so much for talking with us. We will watch to see the outcome of this case.
Yeah, thank you, Rosemary.
Thank you.